Alright, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Honorable Lecturer. I would like to give a presentation. I would like to explain about my book report result today. But before going to the explanation, let me introduce myself first. My name is Ananda Utari with the student ID number A1D020024. Today I'm going to do the presentation about the result of my book report for the extensive reading course. But before going to the real material, we need to know the introduction about the book first. Before I explain about the introduction, I would like to tell you about the title. So the title of this book is Cross-Cultural Understanding, a Handbook to Understand Other Cultures. It was written by Umi Pujianti and Paktunaimah Rina Zuliani in 2014 in the Yogyakarta with 166 pages. This book was so interesting because it talks about the other culture and compare one culture with the other culture, so we can easily adaptate with the other culture when we want to visit the other countries. With this book, we will get a lot of knowledge, absolutely, and a lot of knowledge about the other culture. So please listen to my explanation about the review of this book. Okay, let's going to the next slide. Okay, in this slide, we will talk about the brief synopsis of the book. So, as I get from this book, I got a little bit synopsis of this book. There is a teaching English as a second language or foreign language. Students are usually confronted with so many ideas about strange cultural items. So, this condition somehow also influence their motivation, their willingness, and their interest in studying the language. We consider this condition as a drawback we should omit, and as a teacher then, we compose this book as a means to help students understand the Western culture. So with this book, we can teach the student about the Western culture or the other cultures, so they can easily understand and influence their interest in learning language. For example, in Indonesia, using this book, the teacher can use this book for give the explanation to the student, and the student will listen carefully to the teacher explanation, and it will influence the student interest in studying the language, because the student will interesting when they think fun about the other cultures. I mean, when they think about the other culture, is was so interesting, and they need to understand it. And if they want to go to the other countries, they need to learn about the other cultures too. So this book consists of 11 chapters, which is in the chapter 1 discuss about the relationship between the language and culture, which is then followed by general American values for the chapter 2. So it's talk about the Western culture. We can teach to our student, and then they will understand about how different our culture with the other countries, so it can easier to avoid the culture shock when they visit the other countries, because the culture and the way of life in Indonesia and in the Western countries is was so different. And the next is stereotypes come in the chapter 3, and where we can find a discussion about the curtain levels given to the curtain people from a curtain country. And the chapter 4, it talks about shared intercultural and communication and nonverbal communication is for the chapter 5. And culture shock as the initial feelings we find when we touching other cultures, environments, and it is continued by cultural conflict in the chapter 6, and male and female relationship, table manner, and hotel tour are in the rest of the chapters. So it will talk a lot of about a lot of knowledge and a lot of different between one countries with the other countries, and it's about the way of life, it's about the ritual, it's about the manner, or it's about the culture between some countries is so different. So but in this book it compared between the Western culture in with the Indonesian culture. Even the rest of the chapter of this book, it's talk about the hotel and tour. So it can easier to help when the people who read this book, they can easier to understand if they want to visit the other culture. How can I do? What can I do when I want to visit the other culture? What I need to learn? What the attitude that I need to use when they visit when they visit the country they want to come. Okay, let's continue to the next slide. We will talk about the opinion. I mean, my opinion about this book. So, in my opinion, I think this book is very good because it contains a lot of knowledge about the other cultures, especially in the field of language. Here it is explained in detail and in complex manner regarding to the stereotype, values, and the ways of communicating each country with a different culture. There is also a knowledge about how to behave properly and correctly following the culture where we are in order to make it easier for us to adapt and avoid the culture shock. So when we read this book, we will find a lot of knowledge about the differentiate about the way of communication between one country and the other country. So beside that, with in this book, it talk about a lot of knowledge about how can we avoid the culture shock when we found the different culture in the other country that we visit. For example, in Indonesia, we usually eat using hand, but in the Western country, we eat using full of stuff like we using spoon, fork, even the knife. So in this book, it's talk about that and how we can face that condition. That's all about my opinion about this book. So let's moving to the next slide. We will talk about the favorite quotes from this book. I think my favorite quotes from this book. After I read this book, I found one quote that was so interesting from this book. Uh, so it's written like, in every society, there is a set of cultural beliefs which is in large measure defines the implicit culture of that society and set it off from another society. The belief system of a society includes all the cognition, namely ideas, knowledge, superstition, myths, and legends shared by most members of the society. So, why I like these quotes? Why I make these quotes being my favorite quotes from this book? I like this quote because it explains briefly about all of the content of this book. It's from like the society, even it's about stuff, the beliefs, and the culture in these quotes. You can find it's like the definition or the explanation briefly about all of the contents of this book. It's talk about the society. How can from this quotes you can find the uh, like the cognition of the culture. Okay, let's moving to the my last findings in this book, and my last, even it's include my last opinion about this book. I will recommend this book to you guys to read. I personally recommend this book to you to read because this book is full of the other cultures information, especially for those who like to travel various regions. Especially abroad, this book is highly recommended because it can help to understand the other cultures, avoid the problems that may occur, especially misunderstanding, and certainly help us in managing good communication with a culture that is quite contrasting with our own. When we live in Indonesia and we want to visit the Western culture, so we need to learn several things to avoid the misunderstanding and the culture shock, and we can live normally in that culture. We need, I think, guys, you need to read this book because it's a lot of content there. It's a lot of content there. They can help you to understand and to help you easier to adapt with the Western culture because this book take the mind place is the Western culture. So, after you read this book, you will understand how can you do the manner, how can you adapt, uh, how can you know the values and the stereotype and the ways of communication in each country, especially in the Western country. So after you read this book, you will found a lot of knowledge and you will easier to adaptation. I mean, with the culture you want to visit. For example, when you want to go to the England, you can find the difference between the way of communication in England and in Indonesia. For example, in Indonesia, we using bahasa, we usually friendly with others, but in English, they using English language, and they, I think I think seldom too friendly because the people in England usually busy every time. So when we want to make a communication, so make sure that we don't bother them. But in Indonesia, we usually can talk easily with each others, even you just know the people. But in England, you can't. They will think you bother them if you just talk randomly to the random people there. But they can be friendly. I mean, they can be friendly if you understand the way of communicating and the way of, I think, about the manner. How can you do your good attitude to them? They can make a good communication to you and they can help you even. But if you don't understand the way of their communication, so you can't talk with them and they will leave you and want to talk with you. So we need to understand the manners and the attitude when we want to talking, or their habit even. So guys, I think that's all that I can explain from my book result review. I hope you can enjoy my explanation and you get the point. I hope you can understand every word that I said in this presentation videos. And see you guys. Thank you for your attention. I'm so sorry for my mistake because I'm just a human and I usually do the mistakes. I hope you can give your comment or your question, then I will answer if you put it in the question and answer box. And I'm so sorry for my mistake. Thank you for your attention. Please give your critique if I do any mistake and remember me. Okay, thank you guys. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Have a nice day.